fairly quickly, but what we're going to do is on the panel is split into 4 sections of film. So at the end of each section, we will ask if you have any questions pertaining to that specific section, and we'll go from there. So this is Movie Production 101. And what does any movie begin with? It begins with an idea. An idea to do a short film, an idea to do a review series, an idea to do a sketch or a skit, or a feature film, which James, you're currently, working on.
Yes.
And first step in realizing your idea is getting it down on paper, which is the cheapest way to go about things. I remember my film professor telling me that the cheapest thing about making a movie is writing, because you can write as many scripts as you want and it won't cost a dime.
Yeah.
Back in his day, paper and an ink ribbon, but nowadays just a computer and you can.
Creativity is free.
Mm-hmm. So I mean, in terms of your writing habits, like, do you tend to write specifically for a project, or are there times of inspiration when you just, I gotta write it down?
Yeah, it's like a curse, I think, because you just keep getting ideas all the time, and you'll never be able to make every idea that you want to do. So you have to kind of pick one, or sort of fuse different ideas together. And that's what we did with my film. Working on the nerd movie. It's just kind of like everything I love, I just put into the movie in some way. So. But then when you're writing, you also have to, there's like 2 hats you can wear. There's a creative hat, and then there's the producing hat, where it's like, okay, well, you're thinking of the logistical things. Okay, like, if you're gonna write a scene where you're in a plane, then it's like, okay, well, we gotta get a plane then, if you're gonna write that in. So it's like, I would be very interested if I were to do this film different, like what would it be like if I cut back on all that and just made it easier so that it could get done in a year. But the more it's just kind of like you could just let go and just write everything you want. That's what we did with this. We just wrote everything. So I mean, I could just go anywhere with this, but yeah.
I mean, ultimately, it's the most affordable aspect of doing a film.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, whatever's on the page is going to be potentially more expensive than the actual writing, but
yeah,
it's nice to have a plethora of ideas. And I guess that's the first thing I would recommend to anybody who wants to get into writing anything at all, a sketch, a review, is you can get it down on paper. It's free. Get a collage, a catalog of ideas, and one day the day is going to come in which you're going to have that camera and you're going to have certain types of resources, and you're like, why not shoot this? Why not do this? And worst case, we're going to take questions at the end of this. And then worst case, you don't make it, but you have a pretty good idea. Oh, and for those who don't know me, because I realized I didn't introduce myself, you obviously know James Rolfe, filmmaker, AVGN. I'm Eddie Lebron from Blue Core Studios. I produced a bunch of shorts and various music videos, but I'm mainly known for Mega Man and Sonic, both of those fan films. And one thing we're going to be discussing throughout all this is kind of our mentalities of making our videos, specifically me and the fan films and you. One thing we're going to get across is the comparison of making an AVGN episode to this feature. So I mean, the first question I have for you is, how was it writing this feature? Because it took you about 2 years, and some change probably, compared to an AVGN episode, which is definitely on a much smaller scale.
To write it?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, well, like you said, the writing was the easiest part, but it just took a lot of time because it was just trying to get it the way we wanted it. We kept revising it, and the writing process with the nerd episode is really quick. I mean, it's tedious at the same time because it's a lot of just trying to come up with, what to say, but it's done in like one straight run, pretty much. Like, even if it takes me like 2 days, I'm just sitting there writing it, like for those 2 days. Or sometimes you need to like take a break, whatever, come back to it when you're fresh. But with the movie, it's kind of like this thing where you write it like one weekend, and then it just sits for a while. Then maybe like a month later, you come back to it. It's like, okay, well now I got a little time to look at it again. Oh yeah, wait, that could be way better. Let me change that. And then that just goes on until you have it, everything the way you want it. You just keep making passes at it and stuff. And in the beginning, the beginning's probably the most confusing part because there's so many different ways it can go, and you have to just make a lot of decisions like, okay, should we go for this or should we go for that? And there's just a lot of possibilities.
Mm-hmm. A lot of, and as you see on the slide up there, I mean, there's various ways to go about getting your idea down on paper. You can write an outline, which is essentially bullet points, a standard essay outline of how your story goes for whatever you're making. A treatment, which is essentially more of a kind of pseudo-novelization of what you're doing, not having to worry about the script format. And then there's the screenplay, which is a little more involved. So, is there any differential in how you write an AVGN episode compared to like a short or a feature? Do you follow a specific format for either or do you kind of make up whatever's most accessible and easy for you given the time crunch on the episode?
You mean the screenplay format, the actual like, you know, formatting of it?
Yeah.
It depends. Yeah, I think with everything, with most things, it's traditional screenplay format, you know. But with certain nerd episodes where it's just dialogue, it's just the nerd, you know, reviewing the game, then I don't need to do I don't need to do any of that kind of formatting with it because it's really self-explanatory. Because you know, with the screenplay, it's a minute a page. It's usually what comes out in the film. But with the nerd episodes, in Courier 12 font, it always comes out to be like 2 minutes a page. But that's where it's just everything from left to right. You know, it's the whole page. But then what I do after that, I mean, I don't know if I'm going ahead of myself, but then I'll figure out how many different angles do I need. If this is just the nerd sitting at the couch, and okay, well this whole page, that's fine. I have what parts where you see the nerd on screen and which parts you don't. The parts you don't see him on screen, I read it off the page. And then the parts where it is on screen, then it's like, okay, I gotta remember this passage here, and then I gotta, you know, say it to the camera. But the rest of it, I'm just, you know, going off the page. And then I have it depends how complicated it is, like with I think like the Mario 3 episode where he had Super Mecha Death Christ and the Devil and all this stuff going on. That was like, I have like little storyboards on the side of the script. So it's just these little boxes and just like really like crappy sketches just to, you know, figure out what it is. But then I also have like which shots are sound and which shots aren't sound. And I put a red dot, I just take a red marker and I make a dot everywhere where there's sound. So that, because that's like a whole other tripod that's in the room, because I have like a, you know, the microphone is on like one of those like, just stands. And that always gets in the way. So I usually like to get the sound shots done first, and then I can get that thing out of the room, and then the rest of it is, you know. So there's all kinds of different ways you can do it. But yeah, it's like, there's two kinds of nerd episodes. The ones where it's just simple, and the ones where there's lots of things where I need to make a shot list. But usually I don't need to make a shot list. Usually it's a lot simpler.
And I think the interesting thing with the feature is, on a much grander scale, there are so many more elements to introduce. And it also goes back to the screenplay. I'm not sure how many people are familiar with the screenplay format. I would say learning the screenplay format, you can learn in maybe about 10 minutes. The harder part is kind of the actual creative writing.
Yeah.
So
nowadays, I've seen it all take shape. I remember when people used to do it on typewriters, and people did it on computers too, but there was sort of both, and then the typewriter became like faded, you know, into the past. But then I took a film class in like '97 where they were teaching the format and everything, and that was when you were just using like Microsoft Word or something. There was software, I think, by then, but it wasn't as common, and it was expensive. But nowadays, it's like, it seems like almost everybody uses like, you know, Final Draft or, you know, whatever. So now with the softwares, now it's just like, you don't even need to think about it.
I highly recommend downloading the screenplay software Celtics.
What's it called?
Celtic,
Okay.
CLTX.com, mainly because it's free and it's robust for what it is in terms of learning.
Final Draft's like $200.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, you get, I think there's more to Final Draft. I mean, there's a whole aspect to it I think that allows you to do more pre-production related things.
Yeah, it can break down your script, like locations. Here's all your dialogue for that. Here's how many lines this character says, and you know, like that.
I mean, that brings us to the 3 stages of production. Technically, the screenplay situation would be categorized as development. You can technically categorize as that because everything before the screenplay is accepted is kind of a developmental phase. And it's a matter of writing, and then you enter the 3 stages of production, which is pre-production, post-production, and production. So obviously they go in order of surrounding production. Pre-production, in the short of it, is everything before the shooting. Production, everything encompassing the shooting. Post, everything after the shooting. So then again, shooting is probably the most involved aspect of it. Before we actually go more in depth on these stages, does anyone have any screenplay related questions in terms of the first phases?
It's actually a comment. The advice I read once that Rolfe gave in an interview that I found really good was when you're writing, a good way to avoid writer's block is don't write out everything you have in mind and come back to it, because if you write out everything, you'll have nothing when you come back to it.
That's very fascinating. It's interesting because a lot of people have a lot of various approaches to how to write a script. Like for me, and I've heard that it's sometimes not the best, I tend to listen to music a lot. That's essentially my main inspiration for key sequences in a lot of what I do. And what about you, James?
Yeah, same with me. Like it goes back really far, where it's like I would always just have songs in mind that I want to use, you know, yeah, music is always inspiration. Always sparks your visual side in your brain, you know. But I don't know, like what inspires me, like what to write, basically, or.
I mean, it's more about like kind of like a motivator that what gets you through the script in terms of creatively to create ideas. Some people go for walks, some go on a retreat.
Yeah.
I tend to just sit in an empty room and listen to soundtracks, some of my favorite tunes, and whatever comes from there comes from there.
It's just so incidental. It's always just you might be having a conversation with somebody and then something just comes up and it's like, oh, well, that would be a great idea for a movie, or just you know, and then developing the idea. It's just everything just comes accidentally. Like you might be out in public somewhere and something happens and you get an idea, or you're watching movies and you're like, oh, wouldn't it be interesting if that happened differently? Like, oh, well, how about I just do that in my movie? And then so I watch a lot of movies, I'd say, yeah.
I mean, that's also a good way to inspire. Like when I'm literally driving, I watch Ghostbusters or Blade Runner.
Yeah. My
2 tops, and so whatever comes from either or, because I mean, one is more of the film snob in me, and the other is kind of more of the general film fan in me.
And it's good to just see what's been done, I guess. Oh, books are great. Books are always great. I mean, that's where most movies are made, off of books. So,
So, I mean, that brings us to, let's actually take another question. I saw someone over here. Yes.
This is to talk about books. When you're writing a screenplay, how difficult is it for you to focus on creating a screenplay and not reach a certain point in the process where you go, well, maybe this would be better or easier to do it as a book? How do you keep maintaining focus?
Yeah, because the screenplays they're not interesting to read at all. It's almost like they're not meant to be read. They're meant to be made into the film. So yeah, a lot of times if you write a screenplay, that's an interesting idea. Like if you never make your screenplay into a movie, then yeah, make it into a book, because books are. Because you don't have to describe much in a script. It's just everything's in present tense, and you know, I don't know, what do you think?
Yeah, I feel there's like a certain threshold when you're writing a screenplay and it gets really ambitious and really detailed and in depth, but then you cross the threshold where it may not be realistic to make, but the story and the way I'm writing is just so damn good that I should find some way to get this out so people can read it. Because there's certain screenplay writers out there who start taking more of a novel approach, a more book approach to how they write, and then they actually turn that into a novel. So, I mean, that's essentially more of a creative output thing, which is if you feel this desire to get it out ASAP and you feel it serves better as a literary piece of work, then absolutely. Because, I mean, film is a visual medium, and even though a novel creates a visual, you know, sense of what's going on, a novel allows you to get into specific details a screenplay will not. I mean, a novel will make a red scarf significantly more important in terms of how you detail it and present it within a given context than potentially a screenplay, because exterior, such and such and such, she's wearing a red scarf, and the audience may pick up on that. In a novel, you can drive that point in, so it allows for a lot more detail. So, we'll take one more. Yes?
You had kind of like three different ways of writing, I guess like your script. So is there a preferable way with either doing the outline or a sketch or doing like an essay more so for review? Is there anything like that with that? Or?
I mean, as James mentioned, on more complicated shows like a short film or a feature or something that has more, you know, especially as I remember us discussing, more people involved, and you have to get something across to the people working on it, you want to preferably go screenplay format. But if it's a review and you're kind of like the guy behind it, and there's less elements to deal with, it's more of what's to personal taste. Because with a short or feature, you have to deal with numerous people, and it's just more, you know, of the common knowledge, the common understanding of how a screenplay works to all of those people. So
yeah, even with my feature, like I feel like there were certain parts where we tried to be as clear as possible in the script to everybody working on it, because like it's different when you're writing for all these other people to read it and to know what it is because they're working on it too. But there were certain parts where it was like something in the script that I thought was obvious. It wasn't, like somebody got the wrong idea of something and then we're on set and it's like, oh no, that's not supposed to be like that. And it's like, oh crap, I forgot to really describe that better in the script, or did something, some description maybe was misleading or something. So it is a whole other level of like polishing your script, I guess, like to really make sure that it's clear. It's clear to everybody. It's clear to like the people doing the wardrobe. It's clear to the people doing like everything, like every job on the set.
I remember watching a behind-the-scenes video, and I remember talking to Doug Walker about this, which is when he's doing his episode, and it's especially before he had more actors involved. It was literally just one long essay with no paragraph breaks or whatever. And the simple answer was because it was easier for him when he's the one editing and saying all that dialogue. It's what works for him. When he started working with other actors, he started breaking it down more. So, I mean, that's something to take into consideration. So, what we're going to do is we're going to take questions after each section, 2 or 3, and then at the end we'll just do bulk film questions if you have anything in general, and then that's what it will be. So the first stage is pre-production, which is essentially, could be a lot of fun, but it's a lot of planning. That's the whole point of it, is before the shoot, you need to kind of get everything into place. And it's something that a lot of people skip on because there's so many phases and so many stages to everything before you even shoot. Some people kind of jump into it, but there's so many elements to take into consideration. How much resources you have in terms of funds in order to get this to the ground. Lining the script, which you mentioned, which is essentially taking a script scene by scene and breaking it down, a list of props, a list of locations, a list of the actors in this. It helps for scheduling, it helps for everyone on the crew who needs to kind of get what they need for that day, because otherwise you'll probably go into a day of shooting forgetting 1 or 2 props, but if everything's broken down, it's there. Assembling the cast and crew, which is also a creative element to it, because the director gets to pick, who represents his characters the most, what crew members, producers, cinematographers, editors, who will benefit the overall vision they have for the story more. So it helps them in that. Location scouting, which is visiting your location, seeing if there's any elements that could potentially hurt, like sound. You can arrive to a location and realize that there's a train above you and all of your sound is kind of screwed because you did not scout the location ahead of time. Scheduling, which is a real big one because it's easy for someone to kind of pack 12, 13, 14 pages of a screenplay into an 8-hour day. The golden rule is you would like to spend on a day of shooting, and I mean, this is what I work with. I don't know your workflow is. I like to, if I have to shoot 8 hours that day, 8 pages that day, I have an hour allotted for each page, and then I tack on lunch and break up and break down. So technically an 8-page day can run you about 12 to 13 hours. A 6-page day can run you about 8 hours. Do you have any type of approach in how you like to schedule, or do you tend to like to allot more time?
Yeah, I try to give as much time as possible, but they were usually 12-hour days, and they were usually go over, but when you have a lot of equipment and stuff, it moves a lot slower than it would, so it's very different when it's just, it's different when you don't have that much equipment. If you're just moving the camera around, you can go pretty quick. But the equipment makes a huge difference. That's just where almost. I'm not sure where I'm going with this. I was just trying to.
No, you're actually going somewhere great.
Yeah.
I mean, the last thing on our list, skipping something.
Like it seemed like we would get like 1 shot an hour, maybe 2 or something. Like it was like sometimes it was that slow. But
I mean, I remember the very first time we worked was the Sonic fan film shooting your cameo, and we were shooting that on the Red MX. And you were still kind of deciding what you wanted to shoot on, and I threw the red out there.
yeah,
A thing that you took into consideration, which is, admirable, is that whatever you're shooting on does affect things down the line. You can easily be that client that jumps onto the hot new camera, or you can systematically pick what will benefit you throughout the production in terms of the media you're shooting on, just the size of it. The Red at that point, I don't think had it had one large drive, which tend to fail, and these little 16 gig cards that would fill up after about 8 minutes of shooting. So if you're switching those out throughout the day, there's going to be a given that if you hit one hiccup, you're kind of boned. So, I mean, you don't necessarily have to jump onto the highest tier gear. You do whatever's accessible for your budget, your film, and also kind of your work ethic. Like, I know you're the type of guy who kind of you want it good, but you also want to be productive about it. And there are certain cameras that are not going to necessarily allow that.
yeah.
Very first time I used the Red, we spent maybe 2 hours each day waiting for it to cool down because it overheated. And the director wasn't happy about that. But then again, that was both of the first times we worked with that camera. So it's always, it's something to take into consideration. And then something that I know you've touched upon a lot, which is dealing with the logistics and the bureaucracy, permits, insurance, all that stuff. Because I know when you went to LA, it was like a whole different situation there in terms of over here. How was that?
Oh yeah, don't shoot there if you want. Yeah, the locations are expensive there.
Like, was the permit process a little, because I don't know
it was
how...
complicated because there's like a city permit, and then there's the actual location fees, and then you gotta get fire marshal, and you gotta get there's all these unions and everything. It was just like, it was my producer's job more than me, but it was just like, it was like a project in itself.
And I mean, that also is effective on this side of the coast, which is the larger the show, the more things you got to take into consideration in terms of anything. In terms of, sometimes you can get away with a permit, and there are other times in which if a scene is that complex and you're using a dolly on a public street, the last thing you want is you spend thousands of dollars on that shoot, you get shut down halfway into the day, and then you essentially have to retreat back to your house to shoot the scene in your house when that wasn't the way it was initially intended, which is freaking heartbreaking. So, but that brings us to production, segueing into production, which is you put all of this effort into scheduling, which I can't emphasize enough, that preparation is key, and a lot of people kind of skimp on that. They don't necessarily prepare enough or plan enough. Picking your shots is essential, so on and so forth. Breaking it down so that way you're not killing yourselves over an 18-hour day. But then, depending on how large this is, now, before we get into production, does anybody have any questions to the pre-production phase, any planning related things?
when I'm thinking about planning, I do my own internet review series. I think about how I'm going to distribute it or get it heard out. Like, as far as like marketing goes, do you consider pre-production, do you consider it during pre-production, like the marketing of what you?
A lot of people do. I don't very much. But yeah, it's really, a lot of people are, a lot of times you have to like start promoting your film before it's even finished. And that to me, like, that's just, all right, I need to think about one thing at a time. But yeah, a lot of people maybe start with some kind of, maybe like a marketing, like gimmick sort of thing, or maybe like, here's the, like they might have a unique kind of way to get it out there. And I've seen some pretty creative ones before. Like maybe it has like this, a cool angle with it. Like there's a movie called Brain Trauma, where like the characters in the movie call you through your phone or something. Like you give your number or something when you go to the theater, and then when you leave the movie, like they leave all these like voicemails on your phones and stuff. And it's just, just a lot of cool ideas. There's no limit to what you can do.
I definitely think it's important because mainly when I write something, I always think about if there's an audience for it. Because obviously, like anyone else, I want as many viewers and people behind it as possible to see my work. So I always consider what is this project. If it's a Mega Man project, I start as soon as I reach a level where it's tangible and it's definitely happening, and I know that I can talk about it. You start doing viral stuff, and you start doing whatever you can to kind of get the word going, so you can build up momentum. But as a good point James makes is you can only do so much without sacrificing actually working on the movie. My producer David here, he usually does a lot of very early marketing things, posters, even before we have all of our things in place, teaser websites. It's kind of not a necessity, but it's beneficial to start building hype as soon as it's tangible. So that way the word can build up, because I think one of the most difficult things is you can leave marketing all the way to the end of post-production, but then, having the momentum kind of creates a word of mouth, at least subconsciously. So, but does anybody have any other questions? Yes.
I have a question about insurance. Like, if I wanted to get insurance for a shoot, what exactly does that involve? What do I have to ask for when I talk to the insurance company? Like, what would that be classified under?
How was your process?
There's E&O insurance. Look into that. I'm trying to think what's the best advice for the insurance.
I mean, in terms of the actual insurance process, because you have to deal with insurance on, I think there's usually coverage that kind of encompasses multiple.
Yeah.
I mean,
there's production insurance, or
exactly
the shooting and
So, I mean, usually, like, I know, being based in Manhattan, the procedure is fairly straightforward. It's just pricey. Is finding an insurance company or insurance provider that specializes in-depth production insurance. They have this whole breakdown for essentially every foreseeable aspect of your shoot. I mean, there's so many types. I know there's something for equipment, there's something for location, there's so many aspects, but you can get that all-encompassing in one package. You just have to find a provider who provides it all, and then they'll charge you a premium, a quote for a specific amount of time, sometimes a week if that's what you're shooting, a month, up to a certain point. Granted, you can also get it monthly, so that way you have coverage for a year, and you're paying just an amount per year, per month to have coverage for a full year. So it's usually dependent. Like, as a production company, me and my partners get it on a monthly basis for the foreseeable future, and we pay monthly for a year of coverage because we have so much gear that we kind of have to do that. And then there's some people who don't need it and end up doing a feature, and they need it. Okay, we need production insurance for 3 months starting this date, and that'll cover us until a certain point. So, and there's also insurance for like accidental stuff, in which like if your footage is burnt out or destroyed, certain policies will actually give you some sort of compensation for, you know, the loss of production, which is unfortunate, but at least that's a little comforting.
Yeah.
Yes.
You have to also get injury for everyone involved.
Yeah, like that was, we had everything like that covered. One time I even had, well, you're talking about equipment, even my homeowner's insurance covered my equipment one time. So, I don't remember how all that worked out, but one time I dropped a camera that actually, it wasn't even mine, it was one that was rented from the school, and that was bad. I was like, oh crap, this is like an expensive, you know, film camera, and I dropped it. I was like, oh shit, and it's like, okay, now I have to pay for this, but luckily this homeowner's insurance was able to cover it, so. Yeah, it's a tricky situation.
It's interesting because my company ends up, of course, Studios ends up doing a lot of production assistance in which clients who don't want to deal with the kind of logistics of going to an insurance company actually come to us and we just kind of blanket them, which is what a lot of companies do, is they provide a blanket insurance, which is essentially offering their insurance, which kind of, you know, is a little bit more of a logistical nightmare because now you're covering other people under your insurance, so now there's more of a possibility that they may take advantage of it, but it's always there, and that usually streamlines it, which is another thing. Production companies actually tend to kind of offer their own insurance, which I think is a route that a lot of people go with in terms of if a director wants to hire a certain crew and they have their own insurance, it makes sense to just have them deal with it because logistically doing it on your own is not that fun. It also could be more expensive. But then that brings us into production, which is the actual shooting. And it's probably the most free form of them all because it's dependent on creativity at this point because you've done all of your preparation. So I mean, how is your whole process in terms of being an actor and director and doing all of this, producing and, you know, actually shooting your feature?
It's hard acting and directing because I always want to be looking through the camera, but you obviously can't be doing that if you're in front of the camera also. So you have to just have people who you really trust and everything, and that's what I had. So I have a co-director and a director of photography, which, you know, is always common in director photography, but they're, you know, really good friends of mine, and that's all of us around the monitor right there. So yeah, as you can see, I am in costume, and we're looking at a shot that we just got. And then there's all the roles coming up there.
I mean, I know it's dependent on the scale of the production, but there are some situations in which you're working with maybe 2 other people, and then there's a situation like the AVN feature in which it becomes much more delegated. Everyone has a specific position and job. Some things you wouldn't even think about, like a cinematographer, you would just on a much smaller scale, who's in charge of, you know, the visual design of the film and the camera-related aspects. On smaller scales, he might be more involved in the hands-on lighting. On larger scales, he has a gaffer who handles the lights for him and, you know, grips that kind of make the rigs for all of these, you know, camera maneuvers and so on and so forth. And then as you get bigger and bigger, you get more and more and more elements. Like the grip will have a department of numerous people, each with a specific delegation, and just becomes more of a more involved thing. Like having that many people, obviously, especially on, you know, an AVGN episode or a feature, timing and, you know, responsibilities change when it goes from just you and maybe 2 others to this. I mean, how was that transition?
It was interesting because sometimes we do a shot that was almost the same thing I would do by myself, where the nerd takes a game cartridge and throws it out the window, and then we put a string on the cartridge and we pull it out so it like flies out the window. And it's like, okay, well instead of just me, you know, hit record and then me pull the string, or Mike pulls it, you know, and that's it. It's me, like 2 guys maybe. But this was like just a whole crew filming this cartridge coming out of the window. So the speed, slate, you know, everything, and action, and it was just interesting to see this whole chain of things go on, just to see the cartridge come out of the window, and it's like the same kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there's a lot. I don't know where else can I go. There's a lot of places, a lot of things to talk about.
I love that image because essentially encompasses just kind of how detailed things can go. Because I mean, based on assumption, I'm looking at the right and the left, and I see potentially your cinematographer, the man next to you in front of the monitor as your co-writer, co-director, or
Which guy are you looking at?
right to your left,
To my left.
the left of what we're looking at.
Oh, that's Kevin. I know there's a little bit of light glare in the room, but yeah, that's Kevin's the co-director right there. We both directed together, so he'd be the one looking at it when I'm, you know, in front of the camera. And sometimes we would split up into 2 units sometimes on certain days when there was like more complicated stuff going on. Actually, right next to me though, on the other side, it's the right, the screen right is script supervisor, and the script supervisor works really closely with the director, and he's basically like, he does a lot of work that at first it might be like you know, it's a lot of extra stuff, but it helps a lot in the long run when you're editing. So it's more for the editing. It's actually a lot of things. He looks for continuity a lot of times, but he makes sure that people say things according to the script. So he's always got a script there. And if an actor says something different, he doesn't say the line right. He said something else. He might just check like, hey, is that okay? He's in the script it says this, and you could either be like, oh yeah, that's right. We needed him to say that, or be like, oh no, that's cool. I like how he said it different. So mark that as good. He marks every take that you do. Like, this is a good take, this is a bad take. So basically, if you like the take, then he'll make a note of that. Like if you're saying something, then like, oh, can you try it this time a little more like this? Then he'll make a note of what you just said to him, and that so that you'll know, oh, the one where he did this is take 3. And also, his job is huge. It's like he basically makes a whole roadmap of how the film can be edited, and this is helpful for a lot of things. One thing is because when you're shooting something like this, it's all sync audio, so your audio is recorded separate. So all these notes help you identify which take belongs to which audio file, and that's how you sync it up. It's kind of funny because that's how it was all done on film when there was no other option. Now on video, audio is recorded on video, so it's actually, you don't really need to sync, but when you're using more advanced audio gear, now we're syncing again. So we kind of separated, like the technology kind of came together, but it's growing apart now again because people, you know, all this high quality gear is becoming more affordable, I guess. But yes, that's one thing, to sync, all the sync stuff, but then it's just like, if you're giving it to another editor who's not yourself, like if you're editing your own film, you might just be like, okay, I'll just shoot, and then I'll just remember what take I wanted to use, and like I'll even, maybe you don't even know then, maybe you want to decide later what take you might like best when you're editing, but when you give it to another editor, because we gave it to people to do rough cuts for us, because that just kind of cut out a lot of the bullshit, so that while I'm working on other projects, I was able to come back to some rough cuts, and then I could start editing it. So I have something to start with, basically. And those people all worked off of the script supervisor's notes, and that kind of tells them how to put it all together and everything. And he gives you like a ton of documents at the end of the day with like screenshots and everything. So it's really helpful stuff.
Yeah, I see your hand. What's up?
This might be a question for what you do in post, but I just haven't figured out how to do this. Is there any trick to not having, if you wear glasses, is there any trick to not having the camera show up in them?
Oh, like reflections.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't, because I wear glasses all the time. I'm a nightmare to film, by the way, because I have glasses and I have a white shirt. So the white shirt, you always have to, it's always like overexposed or underexposed. We actually stained it so it's not white, it's actually like an off-white, so that it would photograph better. But anyway, the glasses, like right now, like, if it's that light right there, you're gonna see like that glare. If I'm going like this, it's in my glasses on camera, but if I go like this, then it isn't. This is a bad example because there's lots of lights in this room, but it's basically like where, how do I explain this? Like if here's my glasses and here's the light, you don't want the light to be inside the glasses when you're acting. Like, if it's above the rim, you're good. And it's the same with the camera, but then it's just like, is the camera in a lighted area? Like, if the camera's somewhere like in a shadow, then you won't see it. But if it's like a sunny day or whatever, then yeah, like whatever you're looking at is going to come up in there. And that's not stuff you want to be thinking about when you're acting. You just want to act. You don't want to be like, oh, are my glasses over here or whatever. But I have that problem on the nerd episodes. I have to be careful where I'm looking. So I'm always like avoiding the lights, you know? So that's basically it. I mean, but then it's just the director of photography's job a lot of times to be like, oh, we're getting this light in here, we got to do something about that. So a lot of times it's all, the lighting crew is going to figure that kind of stuff out.
I mean, it's interesting because literally the decision to put glasses on is a whole big decision in terms of wardrobe and the lighting department. Since I work primarily as a cinematographer, I've ran into that issue so many times, and there's so many different remedies to it, but it's always rough. Sometimes you literally have to kind of find a way to readjust certain types of lighting schemes in order to accommodate, because you don't want to hinder your actor. The worst thing to do is tell him you're not allowed to tilt your head up, because then his performance becomes a lot more stale, not stale, but more contrived, because his whole mentality is, I have to make sure I don't do this, even though my character is going to get excited at this point. So sometimes you're going to have to modify your whole lighting scheme and situation, raising the lights, moving them back, hiding them, finding all sorts of ways. Sometimes a funny trick is spraying hairspray on your glasses, because what that ends up doing is diffusing the source and the glare in the glasses, so it becomes kind of more of like, that could just be a window. It doesn't seem like it's more of a lighting, filmmaking type deal. It seems more natural. But then it gets to a point where it's just, you can have a little bit of that in the glasses, but if it starts breaking up the eye contact, you gotta either reblock, you either gotta change up the lights, or one of the worst things is, and I would not recommend this unless you're doing a wide shot, is taking the lenses out. But then at that point, when you're wide, it's not even going to be noticeable.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you'll notice that the lenses are taken out, so that's kind of like a worst case situation. Yeah. I mean, have you ever had to do that in which you were just like, screw this noise, and you popped out the lenses?
I've always thought of that. I've never done it. I've done it in the old days, I think, with like those fake glasses, the like fake nerd glasses you can buy, but not in the nerd episodes. This was like when I was like 13 or whatever, but I've thought about it before, but I also like to see too, so I don't wear contacts or anything, so I mean, I'm okay without my glasses, but it's just like, I just like having my glasses.
So, I mean, in terms of production, what types of tips do you have for the shooting of your film? Like, what golden rules do you kind of live by when you're on the set?
Oh gee, what kind of rules do I live by on the set? Oh, there's probably like so many things. Something more like a certain area of it, or? I
guess it's mainly like, what's the first thing to come to mind? For example, if you're a director, and you have an ultimate rule of how you want to work with actors, like for example, mine is to be a director, not a dictator, because it's very easy to want to call, and I mean metaphorically, call every single shot, every single step of the way. Yeah. You're hindering everybody. To direct is to guide them, to put them in a certain direction, so that way they respect your vision, but they offer their most as their given position. Like when I'm a cinematographer, I love when directors are like, I want this specific shot, this specific story told through this shot, but you can light it as you see fit, as long as it fits within this guidelines. Because then I feel like I can do my best job lighting that individual. One of the worst things is when they're so specific about certain things that you start kind of questioning questioning how you're pulling something off because it becomes more about, at the end of the day, I always say yes to the director because that's just kind of comes with the territory. But one of the worst things is when you're working with a director of less experience and they are so determined about something and they're not willing to listen and open up their mind that the quality of the product is hurt. So I mean, that's one rule I like to work with as a director.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you're compromising a lot, so it's a lot of things, they just happen the way they happen. There's nothing you can really do about it. It might not be exactly the way you wrote it, you know? So I'm always just trying to get it done because I'm faced with the realism of it. So it's like, okay, well, here's what we have, here's how much time we have, and here's all the unforeseen problems that are going on today. What do we do about it? And it's just like, you never have time to stop and think it all through. It's just kind of like, okay, well, let's do this. And I go with instincts a lot. So it's like, look, this is what we have to work with right now. So let's do this. And it's always knowing what you're doing after that too. Like you're always one step ahead of everybody else. So as soon as you get that shot, you know exactly where to tell them to move next. So there's never a delay of anything. So that's what I'm always about, is just knowing how to like shoot it efficiently, because everything's all planned. Like if we have this many shots in this setup, we want to get it all in this setup. We don't want to go to another setup and then go back to that setup again. We should have got that in the first place. But then there's always like, oh well, this guy's got to leave. We have to shoot him first because he needs to go home or something. Something happened and it's like, oh well, then we have to change everything to this setup. And then it's like, oh well, then can we also get that one from over here? So you're always just playing a game like all day, just to like, you know, get all the shots you need. So yeah, I'm always just like, just decided like, okay, that's what we're doing, that's what we're doing.
I mean, that's a lot of things that new directors kind of fail to forget, which is kind of one of my golden rules is there's a difference between settling and compromise. Maybe you're on that first scene of the day, you're running over, you wanted that dolly shot so bad for that last shot, but if you do that dolly shot, the setup is going to eat up time and take it out of something much more important, like a pivotal scene later in the day. So A, do you sacrifice that, or B, do you compromise and take away that dolly shot so you have more time to focus on that shot later, maybe even use a dolly in that much more important scene. And a lot of directors think that they're settling, which is not the case at all. You kind of have to pick your battles when you're dealing with a schedule, so you can't get caught up in the fact that you think you're settling or being an inefficient or, you know, lower tier filmmaker. Compromises have to be made for the greater good, which, you know, sometimes I've had to do all the time. I've had to take out 5 or 6 shots from a scene in order to get 2 or 3 much more important ones. Yeah. So I can have all the shots I want for that final scene where, you know, you have that star there and you have that location for only an hour and picking the battles.
I think it was a producer actually, I think it was Sam Katzman, if I remember correctly, who was famous for, if they were running behind schedule, and they're like, oh, we need to film like 6 more pages, and like, oh, we're behind schedule, and everybody's freaking out. He would just walk on set, take the script, and just tear the pages out, and be like, all right, good, just shoot those.
Sometimes that has to happen. Yeah. I mean, it's picking the battles. So what we're going to do is we're going to combine the production questions with the post-production questions, because I think it's important that we get to post-production, where the movie is combined and finessed and finally put together. A lot of people say it's probably one of the more fun parts because the shooting, the elements, and all of that is now in place, but then there's some times in which things kind of hinder it. I mean, there's many steps to production. There's the editing, there's the scoring, there's what I hate, the visual effects, there's the sound mixing, the color grading, and the pickups, and then the completion. I know you actually provided me with a lot of interesting documents that you mentioned earlier in terms of the notes that go into the editing of your feature. Yeah. So I mean, can you describe what this for?
Yeah, that's the audio log right there. So we have an audio recorder who's on set every day. He was awesome, and he would just write these. He would do his notes handwritten. Some people use laptops, but he would just turn all these these notes, and that's just if he hears like a plane go by or something like that. If any kind of thing would go wrong, he would write it down in there. And of course, if you didn't get it, he would let you know right then and there. He'd be like, oh, well, we got to do this again. The audio was bad. So that was his job. And this was also helpful for syncing all the different audio files up with the video files to get them all, get them all synced up.
I see that you actually on the right page you have a note for, I think that's 60 frames per second, which is a good note to make because at that speed sometimes you can't record sound.
Yeah.
So if the editor is watching something, maybe it hasn't been post-manipulated to match that speed, sometimes it's done in camera and it can match the timeline without an issue, but the editor has to know that why is this track missing, so you have to make those notes so that way there's no conflict or drama.
Yeah, or sometimes there's a sound that gets added in later, which a lot of times will be done when you're in post, but sometimes on set we would be like, oh, we just need to get some wild tracks, and that's what they call them, wild tracks, when it's just like, hey, can you just get that scream again, or do some grunt sounds, or like whatever, and certain things with actors who were there only for that day or whatever, or if it was the sound of like, we were in a barcade one time, a bar in an arcade, and we wanted to get some sounds of the video game consoles. So real quick, it was like, hey, everybody just play a game really quick, so everybody's just playing the arcades, and then we just got like a couple minutes of just the sounds of all the arcades going. So that's like location noise, so all that's called wild tracks. So sometimes you would find files that didn't match any of your video, and those are just these lone wild tracks.
And this forum helps label and organize those because it's very easy. And it's funny because my co-writing partner there, who I'm helping edit a short now, was having a little difficulty because she didn't have this to work with. She didn't have these notes and all of these, specific pieces of information to work with. So when you don't and you haven't been on set, it's you end up spending maybe up to many days organizing all this. When if you just had this, you'd literally be able to start editing that same day.
Yeah.
And I have another few forums.
Oh, by the way, syncing up audio and stuff is some bullshit work. It takes a long time. So that's one thing. Hopefully, if you can, get a friend or somebody else to do that for you before, you can't even edit till you have everything synced up, so.
And we have this other form you sent me, which is a page from your screenplay, broken down. I'm assuming for mainly editing use or for organization?
This is another one from the script supervisor. This is what he called facing pages, where if you see all those lines on the left, that's every take that was done, but it would also specify if that was a close-up or a medium shot. This is actually more for just to see, like if we covered the scene, like if we got enough shots where when you get to editing, you can piece it all together and it'll all work. And there's no missing parts. So those lines, that means that's where that take started on the script, and then that's where it ended, and that's pretty much what that is.
Yeah, and you sent me, you sent me a lot of stuff, which is this daily time code log.
I don't know if you can see that too much here, but that's just more information, more detailed information about the takes that we got.
And we have this right here, which I guess is a...
Oh yeah, that's just his key. Like, so actually if you want to know what all that is, there you go. Just read that. that's just his key to explain what everything is. So if you give it to your editors or whatever, they, that'll clue them all in for everything they need to know.
And we have a continuation of the editor's log.
Yeah, I can't read it much from over here, but yeah, that's all the different takes. You see the ones that are circled. If you go to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like the 6th column where you see the circle, like those are the take numbers, and those are the ones that were good. The notes are all the way on the right. Like it'll say like good take or whatever, or this time it'll explain what we did different. Or if there's like a continuity error, it's like, oh, in this scene, I don't have the pens in the pocket or something, who knows, then it'll say that. And then there's also the slate, everything with the slate is on there. So it's the scene number, the shot number, the take number, the camera roll and the audio roll. Actually, I remember that was a pretty big ordeal, because every time you were shooting on cards, and then at the end of the day you would copy that all onto a hard drive, and then you would delete the card and then move on. But every time you do that, that was just a different roll. So it was like, this is roll number 1, roll number 2, roll number 3, and then within that is all the different scene and shot numbers, and then so basically you're matching all these different things up to sync the picture with the audio, and to do all the different things you need. So all that information is in there to help you through that, because if you didn't have that, then you'd still be able to do it, but it would be a pretty big pain in the ass, or more of a pain in the ass than it already is.
And editing, in terms of after you do all of the, what's up? What do you got?
Oh, I think we had a question right here, yeah.
Yeah, let's take it. Yes.
How often do you use tools like Final Cut or Premiere to actually track all of this stuff? And do you do daily post-production, or do you just wait until the end and try to put all this crap together?
Oh, like as you go, do you like start putting it in so that you can?
Yeah, because each day you start syncing and tracking and then.
Like to.
Like when you definitely finish onto your computer at the end of the day,
Yeah.
are you tracking and syncing at that point? Or are you waiting
Oh.
very, very end of the shoot?
Yeah, like I mean, it would be nice if you could, but there wouldn't have been time. It would be like, it would be at the very end of the night, so you'd have just enough time to digitize it all, but by the next morning, and then by the next morning you'd be shooting your next day. But if you have a day off, then yeah, like if you have like a day off from shooting, then you do everything you can. Although at that point, usually whenever there's a day off, it would usually be planning for the next day.
But then when Final Cut or Premiere kind of automatically do some of that stuff, what do you guys do?
Yeah, it's basically, I mean, it's a manual thing, but when you mean how to actually sync it.
When it's
There,
syncing and like logging.
yeah, there are, when you're logging it, basically what we have is just the numbers. It would just be like, this is roll like 1, and then there'd be a number after that. Like this is roll 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 3, and it would just go through all that. But then you would still have to match that up with the scene and shot numbers or anything, because I mean, it's just like a lot of manual work that you just don't really have time to do then. But then when you're syncing it up, and then you're looking for the clap, the slate, and then you match that up with the sound on the waveform. And there's programs too that actually find waveforms that you can, like Pluralize I've heard of, where you can, it'll actually find the waveforms of both of them, and then it'll match those up. So that's like a more automatic way, but but still, you gotta like locate the right files and pair up the right files with the right ones.
That's actually, when you have a luxury on a certain type of scale, you can hire an assistant editor, or even the editors start during production, in which their whole job will be, as you're shooting, they'll log it, they'll put it into Premiere and Final Cut. If there's a scratch track, like on some cameras, they'll have an onboard mic, and when you run it through Pluralize, any program like that, it's going to match up the waveforms and automatically sync it up for you. Take the track that was off-board, match it on-board, and sometimes, you don't have the luxury of having an assistant editor to log as you go along and get that into the editing software. And when you do, I mean, that's great, because by the time you're done shooting, everything's in there, it's logged, it's ready for the editor, or the editor has already done it. Otherwise, right after you shoot, you have to spend a few days going through that whole process. So it's a catch-22, because you're gonna have to end up, if you're paying for the editor, you gotta hire him into production. His job starts significantly earlier, and if he's, doing a favor, his involvement becomes much more than just editing. Now he started significantly earlier, so, but I guess it's all dependent on the scale of the production, and how the production is run, and the speed of it, and all the elements in it. It's more of a creative choice if you want to bring someone in earlier to start. But a lot of the time they'll have the editor kind of just organize manually right after the fact. So does anyone have any overall questions? And then we're going to go, yes?
Does the way you raise the money for your budget affect the production, such as crowdfunding versus getting it yourself?
I think that's a very good question for you.
Basically, does your budget affect the amount of crew, or
I mean,
just
overall,
like the whole overall thing? Yeah, I mean, just it affects what you're able to do. So you're able to get more people, more like locations or anything. So like definitely, yeah.
I mean that's the main reason why you ended up doing the crowdfunding for the film, because if it came from resources that you had, everything is limited.
Like if it was pocket change, it would have been more similar to a nerd episode. It wouldn't have been really like, there wouldn't have been a lot of locations. It would have kind of been, it would have had to be a little more, simple, like a lot of it in the basement and like places around my home or friends' homes, and it would have been a lot lower scale. But don't ever let budget be the limit. Like just be creative and do what you can with what you have, and I mean, you can make a $200 million movie and it could be a load of crap. So do what you can.
It's always
stay indie. Yeah.
It's always quality over production value. If you can make something that's good, even on a lower scale, you're going to please a lot more people than if you do something higher and
the guy shows that with film that's very involved. Like there's just a lot of stuff going on in it. But Kevin Smith filmed Clerks in the convenience store, and that's the one location in the whole movie, and it's just and it's just dialogue, So it's like that's a pretty smart way to do things.
I think we're gonna have time for only 2 more questions, so we'll take you and then someone else.
Yeah, with editing, I guess it's still, is there any trick to not, I guess this applies more to reviews. I just have this issue constantly where I can't find a happy medium between making the edits too tight or just having these pauses between talking or stuff.
Like between lines?
Yeah.
Is it like, are you taking 2 different shots where it's like, where they didn't actually say it one after another, and just trying to make it sound natural? Yeah, I mean, like a lot of times like you're talking about the timing of it. Yeah, I mean, you just have to find what's right. But a lot of times I find, don't have it. A lot of times I try not to cut right on the words. A lot of times I have the video part overlap a little bit, where you see the one person's face still and you hear the next person's line. A lot of times even there might be a little bit of an audio difference. So sometimes it's like I have a little audio cross dissolve, I just to smooth it over. It's just a lot of playing around to see what works right.
And artistically, it's a matter of just comedic timing and being able to systematically think about what a pause means and where you have it. Like, if it's not a matter of matching audio or anything, that's a matter of literally cutting from one person to another, or cutting from one wide to a close-up and how much space to have. Sometimes that depends on the pacing thing. You want a quicker pace, or you want people to realize this pause is representative of a reaction, this pause is meant for something. That's something you learn over time, which is everything subconsciously or everything throughout an edit has a meaning. Sometimes it's instinctive, like when you edit a review, instinctively you put a pause here because that silence is going to emphasize a joke or emphasize something that's going to, matter and add something to the arc that you're creating. So I mean, even a simple pause is, attributed to the storytelling you're doing through an edit. Yes?
Currently, I edit with Final Cut Pro 7, and I'm looking to upgrade. I'm just curious if you guys have, what you guys edit on.
I've edited on Avid and Premiere, but that was like 10 years ago, and since then I've been Final Cut 7. So I've been editing Final Cut 7 for like 10 years now, and because they've never updated it, and it keeps getting glitchier and glitchier, I don't know, but it's pretty aggravating. So I'm trying to experiment with other programs. A lot of people recommend Premiere now, but yes, I'm looking for that. I'd like to know the answer to that myself. So I'm just hoping they will do Final Cut 8 at some point, not this X shit. So.
I know that a majority of the time I edit on Premiere and Final Cut 7. Final Cut 7 is, I work for a CW affiliate in Manhattan, and their whole infrastructure is based on Final Cut 7. Because it works sort of workflow, it's simple and effective, but they're looking to upgrade to X, which I think would be counterproductive. Mainly because I think 7 is just more streamlined. It's as simple and effective as an editing software can get, which is why they use it in the first place, because when we're editing news stories, we probably have 20 minutes to edit something. You need something that's gonna work. And sometimes 7 does work and sometimes it doesn't. You get the spinning wall of death, wall of death, and next thing you know, you have a minute to edit that story that's gonna air. And I personally, when I'm not working there, I like to use Premiere CS6 because I deal with so many formats, red footage, ABC, HD, XD cam, so on and so forth and so forth. And Premiere, to me personally, is able to handle all those formats, and that was the very first piece of editing software on the
Nerd movie. There you go. Like with the Nerd movie, we have VFX artists, and a lot of them are like, some people are working on Mac, some people are working on PC, people are working on all kinds of different programs and formats. People from all around the world are sending me shots, and I have to put all those shots into one timeline in Final Cut. Before that happens, I have to transcode everything first into ProRes so that everything's the same. But you're saying with a Premiere, you don't have to do that. You just would throw them all in, and Premiere would be stable.
Yeah, I mean, you're allowed to intercut with all sorts of codecs. But then it becomes like, if Premiere can do it, that's great. But then if you're exporting all of those codecs together, you kind of have to pick your battle. Bless you. It's a matter of like, okay, I'm mixing ProRes with Red. That might be okay. Mixing ProRes with Red and Airy Raw, is that okay? And it becomes, at the end of the day, is your export going to take a hit? Especially if you have a tight delivery, like I have to deliver this cut by such and such time. If you have one consistent format, it's always better, but it's nice to know that if you have to drop in that pickup that was shot on another camera, you can totally do it. So it's kind of to each its own. I personally would recommend dabbling in as many pieces of software as you can, and then you'll latch onto one you like, but dabble so that way you can just say, I've used this, this, and this, and I can honestly say I prefer this. I think we have time for one more question. James Pickett.
So I have a question about audio, because in my experience with aspiring filmmakers and amateur filmmakers, that's the Achilles heel of any production. And specifically outdoor audio, on all the productions I've worked on that aren't as legitimate, there's this really high-pitched room tone that no one seems to know what the fuck to do with. How do you get rid of that? Is that a production thing with the equipment you use? Is it a post-production thing? Is it a combination? How do you get rid of that?
I think a low-pass filter might work on some of those. I'm not sure if it's the right kind of room tone you're talking about, like just the noise that nobody knows what it is.
Yeah, just it's just outdoors kind of just has this kind of sound.
A lot of that would be a low-pass filter, like that. I mean, look into it, play around with it, because it's unique to whatever sound that is, or there might be other, things you could use. But yeah, a lot of times there's just sounds you can't get rid of. Sometimes you can. There's a certain amount of it. Depends how bad it is, but your low-pass filters really suck. But what kind of microphones are you using? Is it like a boom or like a lavalier or?
I mean, it's mostly been boom stuff. So.
Okay, we used a lavalier a lot on the Nerd movie actually, which I was surprised. I was like really, because I mean sometimes we use the boom, but a lot of it, everybody was wired the whole time, and all the tracks were isolated, and we didn't really get a lot of. There are very rare situations where there would be noise that we couldn't get rid of. So my audio guy did a really good job with all that. Yeah, I'm not sure that's something else I could think of is just try to experiment with more different kinds of mics and just figure out like, maybe like just to get the audio you want without getting all the crap audio that you don't want.
Yeah, the procedure is the first thing you do is on production, make sure you isolate any possible elements. If you're indoors, you remove, disconnect the fridge, disconnect the TV, disconnect the microwave, turn off the AC, as much as you can do humanly possible, and make sure you have good signal to noise, which is essentially the signal coming out of the mouth to the noise around. So usually it's mic angle, the closeness of the mic, make sure it tracks with the mouth. And then of course there are some times in which you're not going to be able to isolate everything, so filters are your best option. There's things like in Adobe Audition where you can literally make a noise print of a specific type of sound and then bring it down. Because a lot of these programs are actually smart enough to tell the bass and the resonance of a voice compared to background noise. So if you have good signal to noise and the background is present but not encapsulating or overcoming your vocals, it could be fairly easy to isolate, which is what, but then at the end of the day, you have to make sure you have the cleanest sound you can on set. Because I think sometimes having good sound and maybe an image that's slightly overexposed is a lot better than having a really nice image and sound that sounds modulated and, destructed. Continuous sound kind of gives the illusion that everything is, polished and consistent. It's something that a lot of people should think about. Sound sometimes is more important than the visuals. And that brings us to the end of this fun little panel. So, any parting words?
Yeah, we should do it again. We should,
Yeah.
we can keep going. So.
Yeah. I think it would be nice to focus in on a topic next time for people to come to, but I thank you very much all for coming to this panel and hearing us talk about the art we love.
Yeah.
So, thank you very much.